Who's the most important person there? When your customers make a purchase decision, they rarely make it alone. Most people are influenced by others when it comes to deciding what to buy. This is actually called the decision-making unit. There is a typical decision-making unit which has 5 different people in it. The first person is the initiator, and that's the person who suggests or thinks of the idea of buying a particular product or service. Then there's the influencer. That's a person whose views or advice influences the buying decisions. Then we have the decider, the person who ultimately makes a buying decision or any part of it. Then we have the buyer, the person who makes the actual purchase, they hand over the money. And then the user, the person who consumes or uses a product or service. As a general rule, the more expensive or considered your purchase, the more people are likely to be involved in your customer's decision-making unit. So for example, if you're selling business to business or business to government, then you've got a complicated decision-making unit with lots of different people in it playing lots of different roles. If you're selling to consumers directly, to individuals, then if you're selling something, say, like a drink, then that might actually be a decision-making unit of 1. Or someone might even turn to somebody and go, oh, is this drink any good? And they go, yeah, well, there we go. Influencer, 1 person doing everything else. If you're selling to an individual something that's a high value or high risk, say a house or a car, then more and more people are going to be involved in their decision-making unit. So you've got to figure out who's who in your customer's DMU. Let me take you through a worked example. Let's look at a client I worked with who ran trips for schools. So they were the type of organisation where they wanted schools to come in and experience what they offered. And when I met them, they said, oh, we're selling to the teacher because the class teacher are really, really important. They really decide what goes on and what happens. Then we looked at the decision-making unit. And we said, who's the initiator? Who's the person who first suggests or thinks of the idea? In this case of a class trip, taking the children out, or going to your particular place. And they said, well, actually, that is often the teacher because they've heard about us through parents, or they might be a parent themselves. Okay, who else might the initiator be? Well, it might be the head teacher because they might decide that as part of their enrichment programme, actually, they want the school to run school trips. Okay, who's the influencer? And the influencer is a tricky one because the influencer is the one that can actually veto the buying decision. An influencer might come in and go, do you know what? No, actually, no, I went there, it was really rubbish, you can't do that. And if they've got enough clout, that influencer can hold real sway. And when we looked at the influencer, the person whose views or advice influences the buying decisions, it was the head teacher again. Because if the head teacher went, look, great idea, but no, we can't really do that, that had a massive influence. Because the head teacher was also the decider. Because the buck stopped with them. If they sent all of these children to somewhere that was dangerous or not fun or didn't hit the curriculum box, they would be the one in trouble. The buyer, as it turned out, guess who was the buyer? Guess who was the person whose signature was needed to make that purchase decision? You've got it, the head teacher. But who was the actual user? Who was the actual person bringing the children on the school trip? It was the teachers. So when we started to look at the typical decision-making unit, we found that while the teachers were important, it was the head teacher who was completely and utterly crucial. So their marketing had to change and it had to be orientated more towards the head teachers. So when you start to look at your decision-making unit, you have to identify who's the most important person there. And when you know who that most important person there is, then you start to create a customer persona based on that important person. Too often, customer personas are created around someone that you think is the most important, and then you market to that customer persona. And in the case of that organisation I talked about, they had a lovely persona built up for teachers. It was the wrong one, so their marketing wasn't working. And once they reorientated it and they created the persona around the actual most important person there, their marketing flew and the successes came and came.